Okay. Rather than start just by introducing my novel and its title, I'd like to start by asking you a question. When is it okay to use violence? Anybody answer that question for me? When would you say it's acceptable to use violence? To hurt, to harm, possibly even to kill somebody? Zach? Self-defense. Excellent. Any other situations where you would use violence? Abby shaking her head. Evan? National defense. Excellent. So to go to war, right? So you can use violence against a mugger, punch a mugger, or you can use violence in the cause of defending your nation. A good example would be World War II, where it seems like that was a justifiable use of violence. Any other justifiable uses of violence? No? Okay to use violence against dogs? Katie's thinking, well, of course not, Mr. Clarkson. What about a mad dog? If it's coming after you? Only in defense. Okay. So if a dog turns into a crazy mad dog and comes after you or comes after your children, it's acceptable to use violence to hurt it or possibly even to kill it. Are we agreed on this? This seem okay? All right. This is Harper Lee. And Harper Lee agrees with us. In fact, Harper Lee agrees with us so much that she wrote a novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, in which she explored this and other aspects of the morality or immorality of using violence. To Kill a Mockingbird is a novel about a great many people, a lot of different stories, a lot of different conflicts, a wide cast of characters, but ultimately the novel's title tells you that it's Harper Lee's meditation on when it's okay to use violence and when it's not okay to use violence. Let me tell you how. This is Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch is one of the protagonists of the novel. He is a professional man. He is a lawyer. And he works in Macomb, Alabama in the 1930s, during the Great Depression. Macomb, Alabama is a small farming community, very hard hit by the Depression, so most of its residents live in poverty. Atticus Finch is a humble man. He is not one of those arrogant, educated Ivy League lawyers. He is a humble, small-town man doing his bit as a lawyer in the service of his fellow Macomb residents. Oh, by the way, he's taking aim on a mad dog named Tim Johnson. Atticus is not only a lawyer, he is also a single father. His wife has passed away, and he is left alone to raise two children. The elder of the two is the boy, and this is Jem. Jem is that pre-adolescent, the kid who's just looking at adolescence around the corner and manhood right around the corner from that. So he's at that a little bit awkward stage. This is Scout, and Scout is younger than Jem, and despite her appearance, Scout is a girl. Scout is about 5 years old when the novel starts. She's very tomboyish, very rough. Scout would probably try to pick a fight with you if you looked at her the wrong way. Scout is the narrator of the novel. Daughter of Atticus Finch, she tells us the novel. Now, these three people form what is probably one of the healthiest, most enviable family units ever in literature. Atticus Finch is a perfect father. He's intelligent, he's sensitive, he's caring, he's very measured, he never grows angry with his children, and even when he probably should grow angry with his children. Most of all, he treats his children like adults. Scout and Jem are not treated as if they're children. They're not talked down to, and the world is not hidden from them. Atticus, of course, tries to express the world in terms that they can understand, but he's constantly teaching them about morality, about society, in a way that they can assess with their adult mind. And it helps them become adults. Scout can read from the time she's 3. So this family unit is wonderful and full of healthy teaching. And I want to give you an example of one of those healthy lessons that Atticus gives. One year for Christmas, Jem receives an air rifle as a gift. And he's a boy with a gun. He's going to go out and shoot things. Of course, Atticus knows that. Atticus is handy with a rifle himself. But rather than worrying about teaching Jem how to shoot the rifle, Atticus teaches him the morality of shooting a rifle. Here's a passage from the novel. Atticus said to Jem one day, "I'd rather you shoot at tin cans in the backyard, but I know you'll go after birds. Shoot all the blue jays you want if you can hit them, but remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. That was the only time I ever heard Atticus say it was a sin to do something, and I asked Miss Maudie about it. Your father's right, she said. Mockingbirds don't do one thing but make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up people's gardens, don't nest in corn cribs, they don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. That's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. Up here, we're talking about the justifiable use of violence. Why is it okay to shoot that bird? Because that bird is a thief. That bird is a blight on an agricultural community. Why is it not acceptable to do it here? Because the mockingbird is innocent. The mockingbird does nothing to hurt anybody. Atticus has drawn a line. Okay to use violence here, not okay to use violence here. It's a line he drew earlier when he did shoot that mad dog, Tim Johnson. So it brings up another question. When do people use violence, but it's not okay? When is it not okay to use violence, but we might do it because we're weak? Zach. Good. To steal. Material acquisition. When else might we do it? Vengeance. Excellent. So material, revenge, when else? Oh, good. A disagreement. So just pure anger. Any other time that we use violence against other people and it's not acceptable? Well, yeah, Katie. Excellent. So beliefs disagree with somebody else's beliefs and we decide to hurt them because of it. This is a very scary man. His name is Boo Radley. Boo Radley is another character in the novel. He's a character who lives down the street from the Finch family. And Boo Radley is a recluse. He looks scary. He is kind of scary. He spent at least a decade holed up in his house. There's some indication that he's held against his will, but the point is that he never comes out. And he lives in this rather frightening, haunted kind of looking house down the street from Scout and Jem. And they play past it every day. They walk past it every day to and from school. Now, Boo Radley has been kept in this house, and he is the subject of quite a lot of prejudice and intolerance from his community. They believe that he escapes at night and kills chickens and drinks blood. The children make up stories about him. They make him out to be a monster. They basically treat him pretty harshly. His family has kept him inside that house, kept him almost a prisoner. Boo Radley is the subject of torment. Boo Radley is the subject of completely unnecessary violence. That violence is not necessarily physical violence like murder or physical abuse, but it's a different type of violence. It's a violence through torment. And as is borne out in the end of the novel, Boo Radley is not a bad guy. In fact, he turns out to be a savior for the children. He turns out to be quite gentle, a gift giver, somebody who really wants to partake in the society that surrounds him, but can't. Why? Because unnecessarily people are tormenting him. This is an example of a mockingbird, something that is innocent and yet treated with harm. Here's your second example. This is Tom Robinson. Tom Robinson has the unfortunate position of being a black man in Alabama in the 1930s, which means that he is the subject of some pretty extreme racial prejudice. He's also a very moral and upstanding farmer and a worker. He's a family man. He has children and a wife of his own. Nothing indicates that Tom Robinson is in the least bit vicious, petty, or cruel. He's not very well educated, but he seems to be a good man. Unlike Tom Robinson, these are not good people. These are the Ewells, and they are considered to be, quote from the novel, the trash of Macomb, Alabama, and they literally live at the city dump. These are two members of the family. There's Mayella Ewell, and we've got Bob Ewell. Bob Ewell is the patriarch of the family, and he's an alcoholic. Bob Ewell relates to Tom Robinson because he accuses Tom of raping his daughter Mayella. And this is actually a scene from them sitting in the courtroom during the accusation, the trial of Tom Robinson. It's a trial that Atticus works at as a lawyer to defend Tom Robinson against the accusation of the Ewells. So Atticus stands up for Tom Robinson to defend him against the trash of Macomb, Alabama. And he does a wonderful job. As the children watch from the balcony above, Atticus mounts a fantastic defense of Tom Robinson and very easily destroys the testimony of Mayella Ewell makes her look like a fool, and convinces every single person in that courtroom and in Macomb, Alabama, that Tom Robinson is innocent. However, when Tom stands up to hear the verdict against him, he finds out that he is actually guilty. Everybody knows it's a lie. Everybody knows that the Ewells are lying, that this trial is a farce. However, the injustice of this trial is a product of racial intolerance, of racial prejudice. There is no reason for this wonderful man, Tom Robinson, to receive this harm except the irrationality of racism. And Lee has constructed Robinson in this way, so we can see somebody purely innocent being harmed for no good reason, that reason being racism. Ultimately, this story unfolds through the perspective of these two children, primarily Scout. It's a story of children looking at this torment, looking at this injustice, looking at intolerance, looking at racism. They see the intolerance heaped upon Boo Radley. They see it heaped upon Tom Robinson. Jem literally cries at the verdict of Tom Robinson. Scout reaches out to Boo Radley. Both of these children understand that these two men have been unnecessarily the subject of violence. And it's ultimately violence that pervades the book, sometimes used properly, sometimes used improperly. But Harper Lee here has created what is probably one of those moving stories of intolerance, violence, and family that you can have. And in case you can't tell from the way that I'm describing it, I do really like the book, but I like it not just because I tend to agree with it philosophically. I like it because at the core of this story is probably one of the most touching and enviable pictures of family life that you will ever have in literature. Atticus is, it's hard to characterize because of his impact on literature and on film. He, by the way, in the American Film Institute list of top 100 heroes, he was, I can't remember, I think number 1 in film history, the most revered hero. A single father. And Scout, this tender, rough and tumble, innocent little girl, the relationship between the two of these characters is touching, moving, and helps me understand the violence there on a level where I can't really understand it in an essay or some of the other stories that I might see or read. So you take Harper Lee, you throw her into this violence issue, you get To Kill a Mockingbird, which has this unique perspective on the violence, the morality and immorality of it. And To Kill a Mockingbird has been so successful and so revered over the years that, of course, every high school student in the United States pretty much is forced to read it at one time or another to varying degrees of success, and probably will for generations to come. That is, if we're lucky. Ouch. 13. See? A little bit over. So, that's it. I probably would have lost a point for going over on time, but yeah, a couple times practicing that at home, and I would have figured out some place where I could have cut it and abridged my presentation a little bit. But that's that. 50. All right, so we've got some time. In the time remaining, I'd like questions, observations. What do you notice that I'm doing that seems to work? What questions do you have about what I'm doing? What do you want to know or talk about? Hunter.
Like in the beginning when you were explaining the story,
Yes.
you went into the relationship between Jem, Atticus, and Scout.
Yes.
Like, why did you describe that relationship?
Because it relates to the evaluation at the end, first and foremost. The evaluation, and this is honest, this is not just manufactured. My evaluation of the novel is that everything in this novel would have just been ho-hum, rather boring, yeah, okay, violence, blah, blah, blah. But because it's shown through the lens of this family, which is rather unique and rather pure, the entire meditation on violence takes on this different sort of quality that makes it much more engaging. And so that family of the Finches provides us with a touchstone for understanding everything. And I try to express that in my evaluation a little bit toward the end, but you can see that I'm rushing myself. So I probably could have spent an extra 30 seconds or so on that. And being a debater, you know exactly what that's like. I'm trying to get it in there, but start by talking about the Finches because I believe they're the foundation of that novel. And then I try to reference that at the end. Yes?
For the analysis, can you use our in-class essay?
You may.
Or
You can use either, or you can use neither. Totally up to you. I can't remember if the theme of violence was one of my essays for To Kill a Mockingbird or not. It might have been, it might not have been. I don't know, they all wash together. Other questions or comments? What'd you notice that I'm doing, or Bailey?
Well, you did like the interpretation of the book while you were signing the summary. Is it okay if you don't do that?
It is, but it doesn't work as well. And most people don't do what I did. Most people give a summary and say, okay, here's my summary, dun, summary's over. Here's my interpretation, dun, interpretation's over. Here's my evaluation, now that's over. Here's what usually happens, Bailey. They usually spend the vast bulk of their time on the summary. So on average, they would spend about 8 minutes of the 10 to 12 summarizing, about 2 minutes maybe on the interpretation, and about 30 seconds on the evaluation. And what happens is the evaluation or the interpretation seems to fall flat because it seems like it's unsupported. The entire presentation doesn't seem to be very well integrated. What I did right here, I learned from one of my students doing this, because I always knew what I was looking for, but I never really saw it until a couple students a couple years ago. David Wright, who is a senior this year, being first and foremost among them, did exactly what I just did, weaving together summary and analysis. He would summarize the novel, then pop into the analysis, then summarize, then pop into the analysis, summarize, pop into the analysis. By the time his presentation was done, he told the entirety of the novel and analyzed it at the same time. And I thought, that's what I've been looking for. That's beautiful. So he did a fantastic job with an awful novel, Stephen King's Firestarter. But you don't have to do that, Bailey. I've just found it's the most effective way of meeting my rubric requirements. Yeah.
Can you start with the evaluation of whether or not
Yep.
you liked it, and then keep going to the summary and maybe
Yep. You could start with the evaluation, Catherine. You could stand up in front of everybody and say, you know what? I absolutely hated this book. I hated this book, and I'm going to tell you why I hated this book. Let me tell you a little bit about the summary, but I want to tell you why this author shouldn't be allowed to write another book as long as they live. So, here we go. You could start with something like that, or you could start about how much you loved the book and say, I loved the book primarily because of its character construction, or its creation of a fantasy world that really drew me in and kept me turning the pages. Yes, you can do that. Natasha.
does it matter what order you go in?
No, it does not. There should be nothing on the rubric that says this must be first, this must be second.
Can you give away the ending or not?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, this is not marketing. This is academic analysis. What else?
We don't have to do it.
No, you don't have to. Yeah,
Is that off subject?
it's okay.
When do we get to pick out our semester people?
Excited already, huh? At the beginning of semester 2. It'll be one of our first tasks in semester 2. Other questions or observations? You with us?
Do we have to do a fancy intro now?
No.
Okay.
No. You're not required to do anything, any fancy intro or anything like that. Also, I'm surprised you guys haven't asked me yet. Students always ask me. It was asked in 2nd period and 7th period. Do we get extra credit if we dress up? No. I don't want to open that door, because the second I give extra credit for people dressing up, Hunter's going to walk in like a 14th century French knight, and Evan's going to walk in the spaceman's outfit, and Zach's going to walk in a football uniform. So I don't feel like messing around with it. Just give the presentation straight. You know me. I emphasize effective, clear, analytical communication over creativity. I don't need you to be flashy. I don't need you to do anything that's special and makes people say, wow, that was the greatest presentation ever I've seen in my life, and I'll remember that, and it defines my experience, and I'm going to bring it to my children. If you're reaching for that, you will fail. If that happens on accident, great. But if you are setting that as a goal, here's your goal. They should walk out of this room understanding your book and knowing something about it almost as if they'd read it themselves. And if you didn't know anything about To Kill a Mockingbird walking in here, you'd know a lot about To Kill a Mockingbird after my presentation. At least I hope. Lizzie.
Are we not using any They're not going to like.
You may use note cards, yes.
Yours has like a lot of pictures of it.
Yes.
Of the movie and
Yes.
everything. What if yours isn't like that?
Then use words. But you can see how I use words. I use restricted text, so I'm using single words. If you don't have a lot of images, use some words, but use restricted amounts. You could also do what I've recommended for the portfolio, which is pull pictures offline that you think kind of look like it.
Because like mine has like original fairy tales.
Then
So like for Snow White, I could.
correct. You could do that. Although I would avoid Disney representations.
Can we wear a suit anyways?
Yes, you may wear a suit any day you'd like.